A long time ago in a former career, I would book photographers, and these photographers would come out and say things like, right, I'm going to make this image by doing blah, blah, blah. And I would think, what a pretentious prat. Make an image. You take a photo, you wally. Many years later, I've definitely come around to the idea of making photographs. They don't exist. Like the photograph that I'm going to take today doesn't exist. And so, therefore, in order to make it exist, I have to make the photograph. So, the people who I thought were pretentious prats in my head, never out loud, I apologise because I get it now. And the beauty of experience, I suppose. But today's photograph actually encapsulates that whole idea of making a photograph even more than normal, because this photograph doesn't exist. I'm not documenting something. I'm going to create something that isn't a reality of what I'm going to be able to see in front of me. Yesterday I was walking through some woodland and found this little copse of wild garlic. But in and amongst this wild garlic were a scattering of bluebells, and it really caught my attention. So I took a couple of snapshots, and this one in particular. Now on the surface, as you look at this, as you can tell, it's a really bland photograph, but something about it caught my attention. What drew me in was kind of this lone, or one or two or three bluebells growing in amongst this wild garlic. And I really think that I'd make something that scene if I had a little bit of light. As we've discussed many a time, light changes everything. And actually, just to prove that point, just here, you see that bridge? A bit boring, a bit dull. Where the sun shines through, all of a sudden, that light creates this. So in order to do this, I'm going to use some artificial lights to create the look that I want to go for. I'm going to composite, I think, 3 frames together to create the final image. This is, I suppose, a reality from through the year, because later in the year, the sun will rise there and shine golden light down here. It just won't be on these, because these will have gone. So kind of think of it like a time lapse over months. So I'm trying not to trample on anything. There's this little copse. This is where I took the shot from yesterday. I think I'm gonna have to go quite low. What I want to do really is accentuate the bluebells here. I want to fade that off. So I'm going to shoot at 5.6. I'm going to be focusing quite closely because of the foreground stuff. That should gradually lose focus into the background and almost kind of mimic a little bit of misty effect, because you lose contrast in mist. That's what I'm going for. I'm in around 30 millimeters, and from here I think that's gonna still give me the kind of look that I want in the foreground. Get this path in. I think this path here is quite important, because that's going to lead up to where the sun is rising. So I'm happy that that's kind of going to be my composition. I'm going to get my tripod set, because I'm doing several frames, so I'll need to be consistency in framing, and I'm going to set up some lighting. The first thing I'm going to do is just set my ambient light. So remember, I'm going to introduce light into this. So I want this to be quite dark. I'm at f5.6. Yeah, I'm just going to make sure I've got all of the detail. Right, okay, so that's actually where I'm going to be. 1/160th, f5.6, and ISO 400. And that gives me an ambient light, still fairly dark. And that's fine, because that's exactly what we're going for. So the next thing is to put some light onto the scene. I'm going to have the sun coming from up there. I'm going to have some light coming in this direction, and that's why that first shot is very important. I've already talked about backplates in the previous video. Backplate allows me to remove this that will be in the frame. So I want to have some light hitting the subject from this side, and I want some light coming from the side, and this is going to be the ambient light. When I mimic the sun coming from there, it's going to help it all work together as a composite then, because the problem with composites sometimes is just direction of light doesn't work, is off, and you can immediately spot that it's a composite and it's not real. I don't want to fall for that, so I'm going to make sure I get this exactly right. I'm going to add colour temperature gel onto it as well, mimic that morning light. Now, I've spoken about this little pack from Godox in the past, so I'm not going to harp on about it, but it's full of really cool things. I'll link it down in the description if you're interested. Right, so the other thing in is my off camera trigger, 1/8 power. There we go. There we go. Okay, so that's not quite there, so I'm going to put it onto 1/4 power. Yeah, and it's catching this tree a little bit here, which actually I think is going to look quite nice. A little bit of detail. It's light in the left hand side a little bit too much. It's greenery over here, so I think I'm going to go into my box of tricks again, sort that out with some bandos, magnetic holder on the front there. And all I want to do is just to use this to stop that light travelling down there. Now, because I've got those bandos on, I don't have to worry as much about hitting these foreground plants here. I'm just going to go straight to the bluebells there, and also I can stop it dragging out there because I want those to be lit as if you're coming from that way, and that seems to be working quite well. So I'm just going to take a couple more shots. I'm going to up the power and lower the power just so I've got a couple of options. Now I'm going to whip these bandos off. I'm going to put a stronger orange light onto the front, because now we're going to mimic that morning sunlight coming through. As we're mimicking morning sunlight, that sun sprays everywhere, so instead of having bandos on or a grid to direct the light, I actually just want to spread the light now, so that's what I'm going to use this thing for. So if we pop that light around here to move it slightly. I feel like my video work is a little bit sketchy today, but there's a lot going on, so yeah, let's move it back a little bit. Oh, that's right, that's the perfect spot. That's exactly where I want it to be, right there. There we go. There's our sun. And yeah, I was talking last week about the journey, not the goal. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for getting a good photo here. I hope it does. It might not work. There's a really good chance that this might not work. But you know what? It's so fun just doing this, just having an idea, creating something that I know nobody else would possibly have, because it only lives in my head. For me, this is the real beauty. I get such a buzz off doing this, making images, no matter how pretentious it sounds. And I think we've got something out of it. Otherwise, again, like I said last week, the whole video is a bust. I'm going to put it out anyway, because actually the takeaway is that this in itself has been bloody brilliant. I've really enjoyed this last hour that I've been here. I'm only going to get one shout out of it, and it might not work, but it doesn't matter. I'm worried about this middle ground here. It just bothers me a bit. It's very green. If there was only some garlic here, but there isn't, so get over it. Love it. I've got to go home. I've got to composite the images, and let's see if it was all worth it.